Also, it is okay to feel that you're not doing your best. It doesn't mean you're not doing your best. You are, but that's how you're probably going to be feeling. Think about as well, changes in appetite, changes in sleep patterns, all of those things. Anything that doesn't sound normal can be telling you something.
Hello guys, welcome to Chat Feelix Podcast, your go-to destination for insightful conversations on children's mental health. And today with me, I have Giulia Maccarini, a highly specialist neuropsychologist who's been working with children and adults over 10 years. She's not just any neuropsychologist though, she's all about championing neurodiversity and helping families navigate the sometimes tricky world of mental health care. Giulia, all heart when it comes to her work, making sure that families feel heard and understood without any judgment. She is currently the lead psychologist at the Autism Specialist Award at John Howard Center, where she focuses on learning disabilities and autism. She's also leading her expertise to Tower Hill Clinic and Autism Clinic, London. Giulia's mission? Making sure that everyone knows just how important mental health is, especially in those crucial early years of life. Today, how's it going?
All good? Nice to be here. It's good. Yeah, it's nice to be here.
Yeah, busy. Looks like that you have lots of going on.
Oh yeah, quite busy. I think we were just joking before starting this. It's 4 different jobs. Well, not that different. They're all in the same area. Me being a psychologist in 4 different places. But yeah, I'd say quite busy.
So good. Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about mental health. And for those who don't know, I have a 9-year-old autistic little boy. And for me, it's huge. It's monumental to understand about mental health, especially for children. And it would be awesome if we could go deeper in this topic so that parents, including teachers or even health professionals, could have a little bit more understanding of how can we better support our children. And we know that more than often, we see this integration, isn't it, between family, school, health professionals. How do you see this integration in family or family coming together with professionals and school? And do you see this as a positive integration?
I think it's very positive, actually, and it should happen more. There is a bit of a gap there because it's not happening as often as we would like. There is, usually school and there's a family, and the communication gap between family and school is huge at the moment. And I think the goal for it is to actually make it even smaller. More and more schools and families should be working together in order to make the best possible reasonable adjustments for children in general, but also neurodivergent children.
I totally agree. And to be honest, that's my goal as a parent. It's to be close to the teacher, and like on a weekly basis, I try as much as I can to gain knowledge from what has been happening at school and bring that at home so that we can have like the same language, like maybe perhaps the same strategy. That would be absolutely amazing. And on that note, how do you see like the family dynamics in parenting? Does this style impacts the children's mental health? Do you think that different styles of parenting is going to impact the child mental health or not?
I think it's not really the style of parenting that impacts the child's mental health, is what you actually put into that style. Because when you speak about style of parenting, you have to count other things. You have to count, cultural dynamics, as well as, how the actual parents grew up and how they were raised. You have to think about the life conditions, financial conditions that they have. All of that kind of shapes into what kind of parenting you give. Obviously, it's important for us to think about building a supportive and nurturing home environment, that's a lot of love, open communication, consistency, affection, all of that fosters a really good emotional environment for a child. But obviously, that is in a perfect world. You have to think about all the differences that you have within different households and how those family dynamics will play into it. But as long as there's love, there is, as I said, open communication, trying to understand the ins and outs of your child's mind, potentially understanding their emotional development, how it works and what you could possibly do, and really just being present in your child's life, then that really does. I think being present is what impacts the most.
All right. That's good. So good to know, because I was about to ask you if there's any specific advice that you would give for parents for fostering or have like a supportive, nurturing home environment for children. So I guess love would be the first, as you would imagine, but you mentioned like open communication. And I don't know, like sometimes I feel like that my child, he doesn't want to talk to me that much. So it's very difficult to gain any knowledge or what's happening. I don't know. Do you have any tricks that we can use?
I think there's not really like a trick because, I mean, if we think about specifically about neurodivergent children, they're not like, we usually say, for example, if you think about autism specifically, let's just say, no autistic child is like the other. They all have their own little specific characteristics. But thinking about all children, because I think, obviously we're talking about emotional development for children and mental health for children, not just neurodivergent children. They're all different. When I talk about open communication, what I mean is, being able to just be open to that communication to happen. If it happens or not, then that's a different step. Then there's ways you can potentially foster then how to make that communication better, make it, more often, how to actually potentially switch the language that you're using or the resources you might using, but just being open and being there and say like, listen, you can talk to me, it's okay, I'm here for you, have that consistency of always having that openness to be receiving. Again, as you said, love is a given, but we say love is a given, but sometimes, it might be that there's different ways of expressing love as well, but making sure that it's there and it's felt, the affection is felt as well. And then also, I think it's not just about what you can do for your child, but you can do what you can do for yourself as well. Because at the end of the day, if a parent is not well, it's impossible for you to be able to care for anybody, let alone a child. So, building your own emotional resilience is also very important.
That's amazing. And it's funny because that's something that I personally try to do at home, is like always try to understand what's the trigger behind a specific behavior. So because quite often when we don't have this understanding, we used to only to look up for the behavior, like, oh, that was like such a bad behavior, right? That was rude, what you've done. But eventually when we open the possibility for us to see, okay, why is he having this struggle? Can I understand what is the trigger behind? Did something happen at school? I don't know. Maybe I should talk to the teacher to see if it is happening, because sometimes they come at home with this specific behavior or something has changed, but we don't know what. And when you dig in, you can understand, oh, okay, now I totally understand. So I think that being open means that accepting a little bit, trying to understand that behind a difficult challenge or different behavior, you always have like a specific emotion or a struggle, and being able to understand that, it's a huge support for your child as well. And again, just speaking personally, something that I would say, it's that early signs, it's difficult as well. So I remember when Gabriel was just 2 years old and we could see some different signs, well, early autism symptoms, I would say. But let's talk about like the typical child. What kind of early signs parents should be looking out when that might indicate that the child is struggling with their mental health, for example?
I guess first and foremost, a parent is the best person to know their own child. It's one of the things that I'll say in clinic, and I'll tell parents very often, no one knows your child better than you. It doesn't matter what people, like sometimes you don't have the confidence and you might think, I don't know what's going on, but actually, if you think about it, you're the one who knows your child better than anybody else. So any changes in behavior, by as minor as they might be, might be able to tell you something, because you have to think that behavior is communication. And sometimes like children they might not be able to verbalize what they want to say, but they're behaving in a certain way. They're telling you, listen, something is not okay. Look at me, pay attention to what I'm not saying. So behavior, like any sort of changes of behavior, by as really like small as they might be something like okay, this might be something different. Should I pay a little bit more attention to it? Because he didn't used to behave like that. Why is he behaving like that? Or he or she is behaving like that so often. Should I pay attention to that? Yes, you definitely should. Like sometimes they might increase irritability. They withdraw from activities that they used to really like. I think, for example, if your child likes to play with something, like with a specific game, or likes to use a specific object, or have like let's say fondness for a type of book that they like to read or something, and suddenly they just stop doing that, what does that tell you? What is different? They used to like it so much and then suddenly they don't. Something's going on there. There's something for us to pay attention to. Then you have to think about as well, changes in appetite, changes in sleep patterns, all of those things. Anything that doesn't sound normal can be telling you something. And it might be that you think, oh, it's just a phase. Or if you think about like really young children, when they have their developed milestones, and then that stretch of development, sometimes that we call it like the gap in development, usually like if it's a baby from 1 to 3 months when they change sleep pattern again, yeah, you have to think, oh yeah, children are development. They're developing. They're going to have like these changes in behavior or function. Yeah, okay, but pay attention to it, because it's something that's normally done and then suddenly changes. There's no gradual evolving or gradual refraining from it. Then yeah, because you might like or dislike something, and then you might like, I don't like this as much as I used to like before, or I don't like to do this food as much as I used to like before. If it's not gradual, if it's sudden, then that's something for you to pay attention.
Right. Okay. That's very interesting, especially because you mentioned like there are some parents that they are not confident, and to be honest, I think that the majority of us, we are not confident at all. Perhaps because we are struggling with our own mental health. So. And yeah, that's such a great tip. And I definitely can see this happening quite often. And sometimes we see some new patterns evolving and we don't know how to explain, which is, definitely you should investigate. But on that note, we know that for sure that studies has shown that after COVID, we had like a huge spike of diagnosis of anxiety and depression among young people. If we would go exclusively to talk about anxiety and depression, what do you think that are the most common anxiety and depression symptoms in children? And how can parents differentiate from like a normal development behavior, or no, that's actually is not normal, that's actually it is like a initial phase of anxiety or depression involving on my child? How can parents know this or differentiate between the two?
I think you can think of one word specifically, anything that's excessive, excessive worry, excessive avoidance of certain situations. For example, I really don't want to go to school, but hey, you used to like to go to school and then you just really avoid, you don't want to go to school. There's something there, right? There's excessive avoidance. There's excessive, let's say, crying, or excessive, wanting to just stay asleep or wanting to do something else, or being very worried. Sometimes, children might bite their fingers, might bite their nails as well, or like pick their skin. Sometimes that could be a bit more physical. Stomach aches, headaches, that have no explanation. There's no fever. The child is not sick, but yet they have a stomach ache and headache. Often children will present with a lot of psychosomatic symptoms. So for example, no physical symptoms that could potentially explain any sort of like illness. It's not a cold, it's not a flu, and yet they have a stomach ache, they have a headache. Psychosomatic comes where, your body will tell you, if you're not able to verbalize again what you're feeling, that excessive anxiety and worry, your body's going to be able to verbalize that for you. So that's something always to look at. In terms of depression, that persistent sadness, loss of interest in activities, changes in appetite and sleep. I guess, it kind of sounds like I'm repeating myself, but those are usually the tells for children. If it's something physical that comes out of the blue, if it's, loss of interest, if it changes their sleep pattern, if it changes their appetite, all of that are ways of their bodies not verbalizing, but showing you something they're not able to verbalize.
Speaking for myself, it's so easy for me to overlook those signs because we are always trying to encourage the child, but I can see easily we overlooking those signs to say, hey, but every day you say that you don't want to go to school, or it's it's normal, right? Usually children, they don't want to go to school in that they are facing any kind of challenge. And I think that the question would be, so how can we support a child that is, dealing with this anxiety and depression? What can we do in order to support them?
I guess something to say just before on your previous question as well is the persistency of those
all right.
not symptoms, but those things that are being shown to you, are they persistent? It is not going away. Is it interfering with their daily life? And, if you see that there's something it's persistent and is interfering with their daily life, it's always worth seeking professional help as well, because we're not going to have all the answers, Like I said, I'm not a parent myself, but I've been working with children for almost 12 years now. And just speaking to all of the parents that I've seen all over, all of the years, is that sometimes you're not going to know everything. Sometimes you might overlook because, as you said, your own mental health might not be A-okay. And it might not be that you are actually being able to deal with it. And that's okay. It's completely okay. You're also human. So you're human looking after another human. So it's fine to seek professional guidance as well when you're not sure. So I think it's important for us to say, it's not a failure for you to have to seek professional or to seek help. It's just one thing that I thought I should note before, we go to your next question about how to support a child with anxiety, depression, or, any other, if you can insert here, whatever worry that you might have about your child. I guess the first thing that I would say is creating an, again, open communication, safe space, and just making sure that you validate feelings. Validating feelings and talking about and giving them a safe space to express the feelings, whichever feeling that is, whichever emotion that is one of the most important things.
Could you tell us like one example? How would it be like validation? Because I know what it is, but perhaps there are parents that they never done or they have no idea how can validate the child's feelings.
So validating feelings, it's very simple, really. It's just being able to listen. So sometimes, when someone comes to tell, like it could be a child, it could be an adult even, someone's coming to tell you about something that's going on with their lives. And then instead of you going like, you know what, it has happened to me before. I felt like it's not about you. It's about listening to what the other person is saying. So if, for example, can I use Gabriel as an example? If Gabriel comes to you and he say, oh, I'm scared of going to school tomorrow. You can say, okay, what does being scared mean to you? And then you say, being scared is I don't want to see this person. I don't want to go to this class. I feel like my heart, if you can describe, let's just say, my heart is racing or I can't breathe. So it's like, you know what? It's okay to feel that way. Feeling scared is quite normal. Having those those physical feelings are also quite normal. Everybody else has them. And then you could potentially put your own example and say like, I felt scared before. And you can give them an example and say, when I did this and this and this is when I felt scared. My hands were shaking at the time. I had a headache. So it's pretty normal to do that, but what do you think we could do to make sure that you don't feel scared anymore?
Wow, can I say something that is amazing? Because I just had an experience very close to this, and he just like when I was explaining that I have had the same struggles and I was explaining details, and I was like, you know what, when I was at your age, I had the same situation with this boy and at school, and I felt in this way. And then he was like, oh really? Did you? And he's all of a sudden he was like, oh, okay, it's not only with me, so I'm not that weird, or it's good to know that daddy has had like the same problems, so perhaps he knows how to get better. So I think that it's so important for us to share that, hey, you know what, I have had the same problems as you, and I just want you to know that I'm still learning, but you're not alone. So I think that being supportive, it's definitely listening and having empathy and sharing your story with your child, right? Because quite often we see that when we try to brush off or push away the feelings, it's going to get worse, right? It's going to build up something that eventually they're not going to be able to cope, right? Did you have any experience on your clinical with this?
Yeah, and I think it's something, before I even answer that next question, is I think it's something that we do it to ourselves. That's why we do it to children as well. We tend to, if you're not feeling okay, it's like, no, it's fine, I'm great, let's shake it off. Let's just go on with our lives. Let's not pay attention to this. And there's actually this really good doctor, she's also a psychologist, called Dr. Kristen Neff. And then she has this book called the Self-Compassion book. Yes. So to have compassion about the way that you feel as well, because often we will do that to ourselves. So that's why we do it to children. We'll brush it off as like, it'll be fine, you'll be great, tomorrow will be another day. Actually, sometimes no, it's not going to be great.
Exactly.
I'm sad. Actually, I'm sad. Let me be sad. Let me feel that sadness. Let me understand what that feeling is. How does it make my body feel? How does it make does it make my hand shake, my heart race? Does it give me a headache? Does it make me want to, cry? And if it makes me want to cry, is it okay to cry? It's not a sign of weakness. Yeah, I can't cry. Let me cry it out. And then that's when you pick yourself up and you go again. But this is usually the way that we were taught. So then we just sort of like take it forward and teach our children as well to just basically go like, no, it'll be fine, it'll be great. Actually, no, let's validate this. Let's understand what's going on with us, because feeling is normal. It's a sign of being human, right?
So good. And I believe that any other specialists, so for example, if we would go and focus towards about ADHD, for example, do you think that there's any difference, or it's quite on the same note, the conversation that we just had? Is there any specific thing that children facing ADHD that parents should know, or any specific action that parents should do?
I think there's two different things, right? I mean, there is the your regular, because within an ADHD child, or any sort of neurodivergent child, you could put it here, whatever spectrum we're talking about here. Sometimes you have, a combination of two different diagnoses there. You have ADHD per se. We're speaking about specifically ADHD. I think we have to think about, regular feelings that any child would have, regardless of the diagnosis first. So all of those things that I said, it's something that we should be practicing with, every child. All children should have that sort of practice around them, because that's how you end up formulating adults, healthy adults. Having that basis of, psychoeducation around our emotions, validating our emotions will help us whenever we are adults. Like, well, how you and I, we're adults now, and we are able sometimes to cope with our emotions, sometimes not. But that does reflect directly on how we were nurtured and how we were shown how to deal with our emotions when we were little in the first infancy. But specifically speaking about, I'll use the ADHD, but I think we can make it a bit more broad in the sense of neurodivergent children, is, again, you still need to validate specifically for them, because it's hard for them to recognize emotion per se, nominate emotion per se. So I think it's even more important to do that validation. But also in this case, we might have to manage expectations in the way that how fast we would like someone to understand, a child to understand what we're talking about. How many times we might have to repeat. We're going to have to be consistent, We have to be, very concise as well with our expectations. We also probably going to have to be a bit more clear of how we speak, and also manage, for example, impulsivity, the hyperactivity, and the fact that sometimes they might not be able to sit in front of us and have that type of conversation. So how do we actually deliver that information? Do we do it, bite-sized? Do we use visuals? What kind of other resources could we do to then validate and foster that psychoeducation around emotions, about emotional regulation?
Could we dive in a little bit on the expectations? Because I think that's a huge focus that would be like a win-win for everybody involved. And why am I talking about this? Because quite often I see that us parents, we do have indeed a disalignment when we talk about expectations, but it's not only with us parents. When we go to schools, sometimes TAs or teachers, they do have different expectations as well. So quite often I was like trying to lower down their expectations, say, no, we are concerned that we're going to do this and we're going to do that because we have this exam and we have this learning schedule. And I was like, you know what, could we just focus on the mental health for 1 week or two? Because if he is not coping with his mental health at school, how is gonna have like any energy to learn anything? So I think that my question for you, Giulia, would be how can parents approach the school, or how can school create an environment where the expectation is real, right? So what are the signs that they should be looking for? What, in your opinion, what they should do in order to support a child so that everybody has the same vision about expectations? What's your vision?
I think we need to take 2 steps back before answering that question. I think the first thing first is studying, learning, training about, the different types of things you can encounter, the different types of diagnosis, the different types of personalities you might encounter. There's a really famous quote when we're speaking specifically about autism, for example, that says like that no autistic child is like the other. But I think if we think about children in general, no child is like the other. Oh, children are all the same. No, they're actually not. There's a lot that involves in that child's mental health formation and mental health formulation as well. And even like physical formulation. If you think about, what's the nature of that family? What's that family culture? What's the environment they live on? And that makes what the child makes. And then if you then throw any sort of, diagnosis into the mix, then that's even more different. But then thinking about what could potentially be done, it's gonna sound like I'm just repeating myself with every question they're asking, but it's the open communication, and being able to understand 2 things and 2 words that actually mean the same thing, but tailoring and bespoke. Things have to be very tailored, very much like it's not a one size fits all. It's never going to be a one size fits all. So, it might be that Gabriel goes to school and then there's all of these things that they put into place, and then it's going to be great and it's going to be done. But then there's another child, let's just say John, who comes into school, and whatever is for Gabriel is not for John. So we have to actually get to know the child, speak to the family, and how is the child at home? What do they do at home that potentially, again, open communication is key in this case. Being able to speak to each other, being able to also understand, like, actually, I don't think this is going to work for my child. Can we try it in a different way? Can we think about, like, also, it's okay to try something that's not going to work. Take a few steps back and think, okay, this didn't work. What we could potentially do then? Adaptations, like I said, bespoke. It has to be completely tailored. It has to be very much specific, because it's not a model that's going to fit everybody. So I know, I understand that, oh, we're very open, we're here to support you, we're going to be able to do this, we're going to be able to do that, we're going to put a sensory room, we're going to do, movement breaks, we're going to do, we're going to let him have like a fidget toy, we're going to let him wake up and then just walk around. If they're like little and they have like nap time, just walk around and do what they want. If they want to play with other children, I'm going to give them sensory toys. All of that is great, but do you know if it's going to work? I mean, there's no shame in trying. I think we need to try, but it's okay as well to have the expectation that, yeah, well, we failed. What we do next? Well, we'll try something else.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. So good. And on that note, we know that sometimes parents, they truly need assistance and help from professionals like yourself, right? And in that case, when do you see that parents should be seeking help, professional help, like psychologists to help them? And what should they be looking for in a therapist?
That's a tricky question because, again, it really depends on how your family dynamic is. How much can you cope with? How far can you go as a parent and think about, okay, I can still deal with this. I can still work around what's going on with my child, or actually, I don't know what to do. Because the I don't know what to do equals to I failed my child. And that's a whole different ball game that we have to think about. There's a lot of misgivings and misconceptions about looking for professional help. A lot of the parents feel like if they're looking for professional help, it means that they failed. It means that they don't know what to do. But we have to also think about from the perspective that we are all human, and sometimes you're not going to know what to do. Sometimes it's okay to look and say, actually, hey, I need help me out here. It's really important for someone else to come in here right now because I need that help, and it doesn't mean that I failed. It just means that I'm trying to give my child the best quality of life that I can, the best support that I can, and that I don't know something, but I'm able to learn. So I guess, it's going to be very much a very individual kind of situation about when do you admit to yourself that it's okay to look for help. I would say that the early, the best. Early interventions are key for anything and everything. If you are a child, if you are an adolescent, even if you're an adult, if there's something wrong, if there's something that doesn't sound right there, that it's not functioning the way that we would expect to function, if there are changes in behavior that you say, actually, this is not normal, the earliest the better. It's just, and also it is okay to feel that you're not doing your best. It doesn't mean you're not doing your best. You are, but that's how you're probably going to be feeling, And that's the reason why professionals are there. So it's going to be very much like individualized decision to each and every family.
What kind of therapy do you think that is going to be effective for children facing anxiety and depression that you can recommend?
I mean, first and foremost is to understand with children specifically, you're not going to be able to sit in front of them and make them talk. It's just not going to work. Also, psychoanalysis for young children are also not going to work because, again, it involves them having to have that power of reflecting, power of being able to get in touch with their innermost feelings. And that's not something a child can do from the get-go. So I would advise, and I'm not just saying that because I am a behavior analyst, I'm just going to say that because I think it's the one that I've seen in clinic to work the best. CBT therapy, which for those who don't know, that means just cognitive behavior therapy. Play therapy is very important as well. You have to be able to sit on the floor with a child. You have to be able to play with them, to talk in their language, to, basically breach that gap and build a bridge between you as an adult, or like me as an adult being a therapist, and a child who, we're never going to be able to talk specifically the same way. We're going to have to bridge that gap, right? So let's build a bridge. So in my clinic, for example, I'll sit on the floor, I'll have all the toys, we'll do drawings together. And in the midst of all of that, or that play therapy, things will start to come up, and then you can potentially explore something else, adjust your language to a more childlike childlike understanding. If you see that it's not having any sort of results, what can you potentially introduce there? Things that they like to do, things that they don't like to do. So just, I guess, speaking their language and understanding that, it's not potentially not going to be able to sit down and have a full-on conversation with a back and forth with you. You have to introduce other ways, other means for the therapy to work.
That's amazing, because you just mentioned all these sessions and playful times with the child in order to connect, right? And that's like one of the struggles that I have seen on the early days with my child, was that he couldn't connect. He just didn't want to talk. And you had to do something to engage in his world for you to pick up something, or some triggers and some stuff, right? And that, for only because of that, I can see the huge benefit when we have this integration between family and therapist and school and health professionals, right? Because like you just point out at the beginning, parents are the people that they know the child the best. They know everything about the child. I think that the key point is, how can we empower parents to execute those same strategies at home? I know that on that note as well, it's tough because we don't have time. It's very stressful already. I don't know if you're watching this video and if you have like an autistic child as myself, it is very stressful, at least for me. But I try my best with the time that I have to always engage in a way that is gonna create reflection. And another point that I just mentioned, reflection. I have seen the true power of CBT. I have done CBT myself. And every time that we make the child to reflect by themselves, they are finding their own way through that struggle. So if I can facilitate this, that would be absolute amazing, so that my child can flourish in the perfect way. But again, going back to this point, I think the question would be, build resilience. How can parents, or what are the strategies that you could recommend for us to help our children to build resilience against stress and anxiety? What would be the strategies that we can use at home, for example?
I guess if you just nurture your home with love and affection and open communication, again, it's gonna sound like I'm repeating myself.
That's
but
fine.
That is the basic. That is the basic, and the key area. And also, I think, caring for yourself. Child modulate behavior, and environment feeds behavior. So, let's just say you live in a very messy environment. Usually you're going to get very stressed children. You're going to get, children who are very hyperactive, because for them, it's very hard to just cope with their environment and being around all of that and being around too. So same thing, for example, if they're stressed parents who don't know how to take care of themselves, will also have children modulate their behavior after what they're seeing. So caring for yourself, understanding that, again, you're human, you're just as human as your child, and you also have big feelings, small feelings that, sometimes it's very hard to cope with, feelings that you might not understand, emotions that come and go in a way that it's that was a bit of a whiplash, where did that come from? I don't know how to do. So having a moment to try to understand how you are feeling and putting your own oxygen mask first, I think it's the key point. You're not able to foster a child with good mental health if you don't have good mental health yourself. If you're not able to foster a child's emotional education and teaching them about emotions and that it's okay to feel the way they feel, if you're not okay with how you're feeling yourself. It's a metaphor that I also really like to use, and I know a lot of professions use the same metaphor, but it's like when you're in a plane and you hear about the instructions of the oxygen mask, that you need to put your oxygen mask first, and then you help children and potentially people that might be more vulnerable than you to put their own masks. Because if you do that, if you go and you run to help them first but you don't put yours, you're going to run out of air at some point. You're not going to be able to help anybody. So resilience comes when you are resilient yourself. Resilience comes when you are able to cope yourself, because children are like a blank sort of canvas, and their personality, their behavior, the way that they might encounter or deal with specific challenges in their life will come from what they've been observing around them, what they've been observing around their environment, their home environment, their school environment, the friends that they have around them. So that's how they feed off and teach themselves a little bit, but that's how we teach them as well. And children are very observant. So I guess that's the best way
Yeah.
that I could say.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned that the early days are where the child is developing and creating all those cognitive strategies and understanding of the world, isn't it? Like up to, I don't know, up to 5 years old or something. And I think that after that age, how difficult is to still support a child? Because we might have parents with children with, I don't know, 10, 12 years old, and they have been through this struggle journey with them. And but is there still time for them to change? Can they still support their children? Or no, after 5, it's gone? How do you see
No,
this?
they can still support. Obviously, the first infancy is one of the most important and principal areas of our development, of our brain development. Our brain doesn't stop developing until we are 23 years old. That's when our brain is fully mature. So if you think about it, sometimes people might think that after 20 you are an adult, but actually not yet. Your brain hasn't even finished developing yet. So there's key points, or key places, in terms of our overall development as a human, who we can still pay attention, we can still change. The good thing about behavior is that you can modulate it. You can promote good behavior. You can promote good ways of dealing with situations. When we talk about the first infancy, we talk about it because that's where our main brain connections and our core memories are being formed. So those first experiences will shape how we respond in the future. But it doesn't mean that once that first infancy window is closed, it's closed forever. No, you can still, encourage children to, let's say, with problem solving skills, about if they have a problem and let's say they didn't get that first infancy connection kind of put, like, I know how to deal with this. If I have a problem, it's okay. It's also okay to not know what to do, but you can put out tasks. You can give them, different ways of doing those problem solving skills. You can foster their autonomy and give them like things to do that would, like, you can do this independently, it's fine. Or you can shape different things around the house or even in school sometimes. And again, have that integration between home and school to be able to do that and teach those, again, problem solving skills, the autonomy. That will also help into switching how your feelings towards something that's happening in your life, be it good or be it bad. Because sometimes when we're speaking, we're speaking about specifically all the negative, but sometimes it's hard to cope with the good as well. It can be overwhelming.
Exactly.
So that reframing those situations sometimes, if it's a negative thought, how do you reframe a negative thought? You've as well as validate it. If it's something that's good but it's overwhelming, how do you make it still be good but in a way that you can deal with it and it's not, oh my god, what do I do with this? It's too much, I can't cope with it. And then again, just offering that support, just being there and having that open space and giving that safe space builds as much resilience as any other thing that you could potentially think. It builds even more resilience than any other sort of exercise or potential things that you could put, like any tailor things that you could put in place. Just having that place to come back to, just knowing that this is a place that I can feel the way that I feel without being judged. People will listen to me here. People will welcome my way of feeling. They might welcome my tantrum here, without being harsh towards me or without judging me or without punishing me for it. Understanding that not right now I'm feeling overwhelmed with something and that's just, my behavior is just, I don't know how to say that to you. So I'm having a tantrum. I'm rolling on the floor. I am crying my eyes out, giving me that space to say, you know what, cry as much as you need to cry. I'm here for you. Once you finish crying, we can talk about it.
You mentioned reframing negative thoughts, and which just reminds me about the dysfunctional thoughts that everybody has, right? So if you're a parent, quite often you're going to see your child creating like a huge story that is just not true. Like, no, because that boy at school, he doesn't like me because he have looked in a different way at me. He was laughing at me. And when you start digging in and in, all of a sudden that is just not true. So it's like a huge dysfunctional thought that the child was having, and they were like building up and up more feelings towards something that is not real. On the CBT, we have this exercise which is like dysfunctional thoughts are reporting, where you question yourself, your thoughts, and you try to validate if they does make sense or not. And I found that so useful because quite often I see myself having some thoughts, and everybody has like anxiety thoughts or dysfunctional thoughts that say, oh, I don't know how I'm going to do this. When you go a little bit outside of the view and you think, oh, wait a second, do I have a reason, like a real reason to be that much like, concerned about this event? I think that for parents, including teachers as well and TAs, having this understanding, try to see the pattern of a dysfunctional thoughts and try to realize what's behind it, and if it is if that thought has any real basis or not. Because when it doesn't, we might challenge the thought. So that's what I usually try to do with Gabriel. I come to him and say, hey, let's think about it. What are the evidence behind your thoughts? I mean, did you see that boy talking badly about you? Is that true? No, I didn't see. Okay, so we are not 100% sure that he doesn't like you. Second, can we draw something and give to him, or maybe to give like a gift for him? So we've done that. And funny that the boy just came back to him with another drawing, another gift. And all of a sudden, all that building, like a huge building of thoughts, started to crumble down a little bit. Because he was like, yeah, maybe that boy's not that bad. To be honest, personally, I think that's like a powerful weapon in the hands of parents and teachers and health professionals. Do you see this helpful as well? Or how can parents utilize this reframing technique? And if you could talk a little bit further about the reframing, that would be amazing.
Basically, I think it's pretty normal for all of us to have the dysfunctional thought kind of situation. We all do it. I certainly do it sometimes because of our interpretation. And interpretation is very individual thing to do, isn't it? Like if you have, let's just say you're on WhatsApp, right? So someone sent you a message, and let's just say that they sent a message in a very like straightforward way. But then I'm reading in that message, and what's going on for me? Let's say that day I'm feeling a bit more anxious, there are other things going on, and then I'm not feeling as well as I should. And then I'll read that message and I'll interpret as, hey, G is not happy with me. He's mad at me. G didn't like what I said. And then I'll start to sort of fester that feeling and think about all sorts of things. You know what? He doesn't like me at all. He just tolerates me. You start sort of create situations to validate feelings yourself. But often when we try to validate our own feelings and we don't have that sort of idea that potentially it's not just about us, it might be about the other people, and it might be that there's something going on for the other person, and that interpretation, that becomes a very much a dysfunctional thought or a dysfunctional way of interpreting things. And then you start to sort of create reasoning behind it. And that's just not healthy, is it? So in order to reframe that, and then it's interesting that you say you've been through CBT before and you realize, and it is a powerful tool, that people as in, psychologists who have to be able to use and to sort of put there and make sure that, hey, what if we look this way? What if we realize that it's kind of like someone looking from the outside, because when the feeling or the thought is in you, it's really hard for you to sort of like part with it and say, let me look from a different lens. Let me look from a different angle and try to understand what's going on. So within a child's case, having a parent knowing that it's okay for you to say, should we talk about what's going on? Should you try to understand how you're feeling? Again, not dismissing what the child is feeling at that moment, validating it and saying like, oh, I think that child doesn't like me because he's laughing at me, because he looked at me in the wrong way, or he said something that I didn't like. So I understand you're feeling that way. It's quite uncomfortable to feel that way, isn't it? Because of this, and this. So you validate that first to make sure that, this person, they're not going through what I'm going through, and yet they're asking me to not think this way. So you validate that first, and then you realize, let me be the person that's outside of the situation and let me reframe that for you. It's really hard to reframe a situation by yourself unless you've had therapy, unless you've learned that, how like someone taught you how to do that. It's hard for you to just sit and say, you know what, let me just reframe how to do this right now. I totally can do it by myself. So it's interesting to have a parent knowing how to do that, a teacher knowing how to do that, a healthcare professional, a psychologist being able to know how to do that. But again, who teaches these people as well? So it's important for you to realize that's going back to our early conversation in the beginning of our talk, is that, training, understanding, knowing that sometimes, people need help, children need help, children need guidance, but we also need guidance ourselves. It's kind of like a vicious circle, really. We need to be able to help ourselves to help other people, and other people will help us. And it becomes kind of like something that eventually works in a way that, yeah, okay, we can work with this. It's fine. It's gonna work. We'll go forward. But it's perfectly normal. We all do it. And unless someone teaches us how to reframe that, how to look through other lens and other angles, we're not gonna be able to do it ourselves.
Again, I love that. I absolutely love that, because that means that everybody has their own beliefs system, right? And having empathy is for you have the ability to read through the lens of that person belief systems, if that makes sense. So when you try to analyze the child's behavior triggers, you are actually understanding their own belief systems and see how they operate, and see, you know what, I know that, for example, my child, whenever somebody laughs at him, and it's not because everybody's making funny at him, sometimes we're laughing because we're making some jokes, he interprets as that person doesn't like me. That's his belief system. So it's very difficult to deconstruct this. But understanding it's a paramount, because I can support him. So I can be ready to say, hey, I know what happened. You're feeling angry or sad because that boy just laughed at you. By the way, he doesn't know you. It's not because of you, right? He's laughing because he's making funny jokes with his brother. So I can't be there on time. But again, I'm talking about myself only. That would be absolutely amazing if the community, teachers and TAs, could have the same powerful mindset. And that only going to happen through education videos like this one. Because as you just mentioned, you're not going to be able to do this if you have not done some sort of therapy by yourself or study, or you're like a therapist, right? It's very difficult to understand your own feelings, and it's very normal. People, they don't realize their own belief systems. They don't know how they react. They don't know what makes them upset, sad, or happy. It's very difficult. Well, on that note, I would like to shift a little bit the conversation about Chat Feelix, because Giulia has joined Chat Feelix as our Chief Psychology Officer, which we are really, really proud of. It's like a huge success for the business, and I think that everything that we're talking about, it's like it paints exactly the picture that we are trying to solve, isn't it? Like education and educating parent, educating child, and trying to understand the child's belief systems, or having like a tool that we can help children to better understand themselves, is just something that I couldn't see out there. So Giulia, thank you very much for coming to Chat Feelix, and could you please talk a little bit about your role at Chat Feelix, what you're gonna do, and what is exciting for, I don't know, the next few months?
Yeah, of course. I guess we have both of us at the moment, and I guess you are the, mastermind behind it, with, designing, creating Feelix, creating the product, making sure that it's interesting in the sense of how it works. And I guess you could say that I am on the other end, which is, making sure that this is all evidence-based, making sure that, there's science behind it, making sure that whatever we're putting out there is something that's helpful, and it doesn't end up being just another tool, right? It's important to have that, psychology behind, real understanding of the emotions based, and how we can potentially put that out there in a way that it becomes something that's, invaluable, something that it just becomes, I just need to have this, because it gives me the tool that I need. It gives the child the tool that they need. It gives the child a safe space that sometimes a parent might not be able to provide, because as we spoke about during this conversation, all about creating a safe space, having open communication, but that's in an ideal world. We have to think about how our lives really play out in a day-to-day sense. Most parents work they have work to deal with, they might have more than one child, might have all the things going on, might have their own personal in and out feelings of things that are going on in the world, might not be feeling the best, might be overwhelmed, because it can be quite overwhelming to deal with the world. Plus, being a parent is overwhelming per se, from the get-go, or so people say to me all the time in this last 12 years. Like I said, I'm not a parent myself, but I think I can comment a little bit just by being able to be the safe space for those parents. So I guess my view of this is that it's a very precious thing that we're doing, that we are trying to create, because it gives children a safe space to be able to talk about. It speaks a language that children can understand, that sometimes parents might not know how to do it. It kind of bridges that gap, and it brings a little bit of technology into it, because as much as we know that screens might not be the best thing for a child development, we just can't run away from it, because it's it's our reality, it's out there, it's needed, and it's what engages children the most these days. It's also something that, again, it's a tool for parents to know, to learn themselves how to adjust their language, adjust their way of communicating with their children. But it's also a tool that if they don't know, it's also okay for them to not know what to do. And here's Felix, helping you out. So I guess it's I guess it's for me, when you pitched it to me, when you came with the pitch and you said, listen, this is something I would really like you to be part of because of this, and this and that. And I thought, this is something that I've actually been thinking about for quite some time. And it's the struggle that I have in clinic. It's a lot of the parents will come to me because they really don't know how to do it. They really don't know how to support their child in this particular thing. And here we are trying to create something to help, and I guess, no one's gonna shy away from help in this sense. Yeah. So I guess it's very exciting.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And as Giulia has said, she's joining to bring all the evidence base into our AI feature, which is our lovely Felix 3D character that speaks and talks with children. So Giulia is joining to create those principles, like the same principles that we just discussed, like, hey, parents should know this, like CBT, right? It's exactly the same principles that Felix is using with the child. So when the child talks with Felix, he's gonna validate the child's feelings, he's gonna try to understand, emulate that. But better than that, for me as a parent, is to have a picture, insights and information about what is going on with my child, which I don't know. So sometimes he's only going to talk and speak with Felix about his struggles, not with me. And in the future, very soon, we're rolling out exciting new features. The next one's going to be an assessment based on the SDQ, which is going to mean that you're going to be able to assess your child very quickly, responding a few questions. We're going to use AI to analyze that response. And with that in mind, we'll have like a better picture of your child's strengths and challenges, so that Felix can better support your child. And not only that, parents will be able to share the link with their teachers and health professionals. So you could have multiple people making the assessment, and that evaluation is going to help your child to grow as well, so that you could have like helpful insights. And in the future, we're planning to have like a one-on-one support directly to parents, schools, professionals, so that the team of psychologists at Chat Feelix can help you as a parent. That would be amazing, something that I couldn't find. So I'm likely going to be the first parent to sign up. But I just want to say thank you very much, Giulia, for your time. It's been absolutely amazing to have you in our podcast. And if you're watching this, please make sure you're going to subscribe to our podcast. You're going to share this with other parents or a teacher or any health professionals. And if you wanted to participate in our podcast, or if you wanted just to share this with another health professional that you know or a teacher, please invite them. We would love to talk to you. This is all about the children's mental health space. We wanted to raise awareness, and we wanted to make sure that parents, health professionals, everybody knows how to support their child. Thank you very much, Giulia.
Thank you.
Bye.